Russian President Vladimir Putin wanted to contain NATO. But since the war broke out in Ukraine, we've been hearing a lot of this.
He wants less NATO, he's getting more NATO. He wanted to divide us, he's getting a more united alliance.
And that is certainly true. Just a few years ago, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which was created after World War II to serve as a check on Soviet expansion, was struggling to portray a united front.
Tonight, there is worldwide fallout after President Trump once again raised doubts about his commitment to NATO.
Macron said NATO was experiencing, quote, brain death.
Now, Putin's invasion of Ukraine hasn't just strengthened the bond of NATO countries or their commitment to Article 5, which stipulates that an attack on one is an attack on all. Putin's war is actually making the alliance stronger in tangible ways, particularly on its eastern flank, in the countries closest to Russia. Here are 3 ways that NATO has responded to the war in Ukraine. First, the alliance is significantly upgrading its arsenal of weapons. One way this is happening is through increased defense spending. Germany is the most notable example, pledging to almost double what it was spending before the war. It has already announced that it wants to buy state-of-the-art drones from Israel and F-35 warplanes from the US to deter Russian nuclear threats. Poland and Estonia have also pledged to spend more, while other members are currently hashing out new spending proposals. Another way NATO members are upgrading their arsenals is through their huge operation to resupply Ukrainian forces. As NATO countries funnel weapons and supplies to Ukraine, many are seeking the latest and greatest US-made weapons to refill their depleted stockpiles. One example of this so-called upgrading is Slovakia. The country already received American-made Patriot air defense systems from Germany and the Netherlands so that it could send its Soviet-era S-300 air defense systems to Ukraine. Secondly, NATO has responded to the war with more boots on the ground. NATO didn't deploy combat troops to the eastern part of the alliance until Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. But in response to what NATO calls Russian aggression, it created 4 multinational battle groups in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. Now, due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the alliance has agreed to add 4 more, adding battle groups in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia. But here's the thing, NATO says these troops are rotating and therefore not considered permanent. Now, that could change. So far, NATO hasn't permanently based troops on the eastern flank, because a quarter century ago, NATO and Russia struck an agreement. Per the NATO-Russia Founding Act, NATO said it wouldn't put troops in its new eastern members. And NATO and Russia committed not to threaten each other, use force against each other, or use force against any other state, its sovereignty, territorial integrity, or political independence. Now that Russia has invaded Ukraine, Western officials say that agreement is nullified, and that the alliance can put troops wherever it sees fit. And last but not least, as a result of this war, NATO could expand even further. In the officially neutral countries of Finland and Sweden, polls show that for the very first time, a majority of the populations support joining the alliance.
We have a changed situation in both in Finland and Sweden. This is something we have now opened discussion with our parliament.
Finland shares the European Union's longest border with Russia, so it has tried to avoid antagonizing Moscow. But Russia's invasion of Ukraine has alarmed the population. Russia has explicitly warned Finland and Sweden not to join NATO. Nevertheless, the 2 countries both participated in an emergency NATO meeting in March. So NATO is clearly getting stronger, but one country that's unlikely to join anytime soon, Ukraine. Countries that want to join must meet strict criteria, and Ukraine is far from meeting those requirements. In recent weeks, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has acknowledged that Ukraine is unlikely to become a NATO member anytime soon. If you thought this piece was informative, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. I'll see you soon.